You're Hearing Voices, a podcast for the voiceover community. Both of you. Here's your host, Dan Hankowitz.
Hello once again, my friends. Welcome back to You're Hearing Voices. This is a podcast about voice acting, about entrepreneurship, and about freelancing. So good to have you with us, and so good to have the support of people who have reached out to me and told me they enjoyed the podcast. I certainly always enjoy the encouragement that I'm getting. You know, my friends, if you've listened to my podcast for any length of time, and I've only got about 60 episodes, you know that I like to talk to people from all walks of life, and I like to span the globe in doing so. And one of the most interesting things, or the most interesting thing in being a podcast host in an interview format, is hearing everyone's unique story. And this week, I'm very pleased and very honored to have with me Ayuma Michelle. She is the founder and story coach for entrepreneurs at Let's. That's L-E-T capital S. And I will give the URL, letsfindyourstory.com. Letsfindyourstory.com is her URL. And as I say, she is a storyteller. Her organization is concerned with empowering women and helping women to tell their story and helping to encourage the entrepreneurial impulse. She also has a popular YouTube channel by the same name. You can find her there. I've watched many of her videos. In addition to that, she is a voiceover artist in Kenya. And we were speaking earlier, and I introduced her, or I was about to introduce her as being from Nairobi, and she told me that she is 2 hours outside of Nairobi, and the name of the town has escaped me, so she will help me with my geography here in a moment. But Ayuma, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me over at your podcast. The name of my current location is called Athi River. It's the location, the name of the location, but also the name of the river near where we live.
And you said it's about two hours from Nairobi, yes?
Nairobi, yes. With no traffic, without traffic, it's probably shorter. But I mean, Nairobi is known for so much traffic.
I was watching some of your YouTube videos before we connected, and if there's one thing that's evident about you and your mission, Ayuma, it's about, well, just about you. It's your great passion for helping to empower women and helping women to tell their own unique story. So I just want to kind of start from the beginning. What gave you the spark to do that? What was your first impetus? What made you jump in and say, this is what I'm going to dedicate my career and indeed my professional life to? How did that all come about for you?
Yeah, thank you. That's such a loaded question. And oftentimes, whenever people ask me this question, it feels like I'm about to have a therapy session because it's so deep. It's so deep. But if I'm to actually start from the moment my journey in this kind of work began, it's I would say since childhood, because I come from a very patriarchal family. And with regards to the indigenous culture I come from here in Kenya, it's known for its patriarchy. It's really deep rooted. And growing up, I kept on hearing these things said to me as a young girl that women are to be seen and not to be heard. And so that ached me, that annoyed me. I was a child, but then I didn't understand why boys could speak and I couldn't. I didn't understand why women could speak in some places and in other places they couldn't. So I would remember, even for example, family holidays, like Christmas holidays at my grandfather's farm in the village. There would be a great divide because the boys and the men would go and sit under the village shack and they would have these conversations about their dreams, about money, because they are exceptional men in my family. I mean, they range from businessmen to politicians to great journalists, and now recently with my cousins, they're great athletes. But then I didn't understand why I couldn't hear an echo of such conversations with women, because it's as though we had signed up for a holiday package that we didn't sign up for. We were given a holiday package that we didn't sign up for because women and girls were literally tied to the kitchen and house chores and all kinds of things. The only things I could hear them talk about were, disciplining children, washing things, cleaning utensils, harvesting some produce from the farm. And it really ached me because on the other side, the men and the boys would be talking about big money and their dreams, and they would boldly do that. And I wanted to be part of those conversations. But because I was a girl, and you can imagine my dad is one of the pioneer entrepreneurs, him and my late grandfather, they're the strongest businessmen in my family. So I was like, how can I come from such men and then not be part of such conversations? They need to pass down some of that wisdom and stuff. But even with a mother like mine, my mom is a pioneer in the non-farm medical industry in my country. But when she would go to the villages, it's as though she had to dumb herself down. She couldn't talk about those things and her achievements. She couldn't talk about money. She just became one of the women. And as a woman, she could not talk about money. She could not talk about her dreams. She could not empower fellow women. She was only tied to domestic chores. And you can only imagine what that means to the girls who are not empowered. For me, luckily, because I grew up in the city, I had options. I had, in fact, the school I was going to was run by one of the pioneer female bankers in our country. So that gave me options. But I can only imagine what it meant for my cousins who are girls who never ever saw a woman speak boldly about money and pursuing her dreams, And even right now in my adult life, when I think about some examples in my family, I can't remember for example, my dad's mom, my paternal grandmother. I can't remember her voice. I literally can't remember her voice because she was praised to be a woman who was silent. She was literally silent most of the time. And in my culture, that praises a woman. Women like those are praised to be, this is a good woman. She knows her place, whatever that means. And so for me, it really aches me that in my adult life, when I'm growing into my selfhood as a woman, I don't hear voices and I don't know how to identify with these voices. I need to go to beyond my family, beyond my country, and look to women who sort of sound like the voice that I have of myself inside. And so as I grew older, I realized that it wasn't just a family issue, because in school, I also noticed that decreasing number of girls raising their hands in class because they were trying to look cool and cute and mysterious to the boys. They weren't raising their hands. And for me, I didn't have time for that. I had questions to ask. I was very bold and brave and obviously not so popular with the boys. And then in my entrepreneurship journey, I learned that, it's not just a schoolgirl issue, it's a woman's issue. Because now by working with women in different parts of the world, even beyond my country, I'm realizing it's a women's issue. It's happening all around the world, that somehow many of our societies and cultures and environments and our nations are somewhat imposing this thing of that for you to be a good woman, you must be silent and quote unquote know your place and let the men take the win and be comfortable with whatever you are. And entrepreneurship does not care for gender. It cares about getting stuff done. And so that is when I was having a very important moment of transition in my business, and I needed to focus so that I can earn more and to keep my business alive, because I'm the very first businesswoman in my entire family. And even getting into the business, I had literally no support. So for me, I needed to make this work. There was no other chance. There was no other choice. When I had to make the decision as to whom will I serve, if I was to serve somebody for the rest of my life, if I was to pour myself into serving a certain group of people, who would this be? Who would it be personal for me to serve and to see thrive and live out their wildest dreams? I look no further than women. For me, it gives me joy that one day I'd be able to tell my children, boys and girls, that I contributed towards a solution. I contributed towards making a more equitable world for both boys and girls, both men and women, to thrive, without seeing it that one person thriving is taking away from the other, but that we can do more together. There's an African saying that says, we go far together. If you want to go far, you do it together. Yeah, then I would say that was the beginning. It started from childhood, then followed me through school, then followed me through my entrepreneurship journey. and till where I'm at now.
So let's talk about your entrepreneurial efforts. Let's find your story. What is that all about? What are the services that you offer, and what do you do via that organization or that effort?
Yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful question. So LET stands for Leading Through Story. It's an acronym that stands for Leading Through Story. But I also love that it's also a call to action. And my work really is all about a call to action, calling people to action, which is changing the world using their stories. And even in my work, yes, I mainly focus on women, but there are men who've actually reached out to me and asked me for support. And I never say no to somebody who's willing to transform their lives. And so I've had such amazing, amazing allies working with me. And obviously their work speaks to a lot of amazing work women are doing. So what LET stands for, it's all about empowering and envisioning and working towards a world where global women's stories change the world. Why? Because women hold 50% of the world's magic, 50% of the world's solutions, ideas, awesomeness, juiciness, all of those. And the fact is we don't have enough women on decision-making tables. We don't have enough women's stories showcasing awesome and showcasing ideas and solutions. And so, but also I noticed that most of the women leaders that I meet are either taught to be like men or they're taught to fight men. What does this mean? When I did my little bit of research, I realized that most of the leadership development training out there is actually suitable for men. The fact is, women and men will lead completely differently. Like our natural styles of leadership are completely different. And so we need to simply learn, and men can learn some of the feminine leadership styles, but also women can also have been taught to only learn a masculine leadership styles. And the fact is, different leadership sectors and spaces require different types of leadership styles. So women have predominantly been taught the masculine one, and so that's why most of the time you see a woman leading using masculine leadership skills and she gets vetoed or booted out. But that isn't the only way. There are various ways. There's also the feminine styles, which, by the way, right now are what are the most popular styles across the world. I see it used quite a lot, not only in the States, but mostly in Europe. And it's working. And so this really ached me, because you have Jane and John going for a leadership training. 3 months later, John is thriving and Jane is asking, why am I still in the same place I was at? And it's because Jane hasn't been taught how to lead as Jane. She hasn't been taught how to lead using her natural leadership style. And because the world predominantly has been shaped, and most systems have shaped men to thrive, but we literally have to start teaching women how to do things. I learned that Sheryl Sandberg, for example, commented about a medical app, a health app, that was to be used by a huge organization, and they left out something as simple as having a menstrual cycle checker. So it's as though women, we need to infuse the fact that we exist. We need to infuse the fact that, hey, we can actually lead. But the component that's normally missing is then how can they lead as women? So this is why I started LET, to teach women how to lead as women, to provide this alternative leadership that hasn't been taught, because the world wasn't prepared for women to lead. And so I've mainly been doing this over the last 6 years. Actually, I celebrated my 6th anniversary in November. I've been doing this mainly through brand storytelling, teaching women to boldly own their stories and to share their entrepreneurship stories in a very unique way, as to really, why did you really start your business? What solution are you really offering? And why does this matter? Enough about trying to be like a corporate, enough about trying to be so perfect, but really delving deep into the vulnerability and human connection and emotion, and teaching people the real why behind businesses, because it's really emotional. Even if you're talking about finance in business, it's really emotional. And we need to welcome our emotions and our vulnerabilities as strength, as things that help us thrive in business. So I have been serving women. Right now, I've served over 600 leaders across 5 continents using my leadership development training. I've served 65 businesses, and most of whom are women. Then there is keynote speaking. I've been invited by various organizations to speak on gender equity themes, be it finance, be it economic, be it whatever it may be, as long as it drives the conversation of gender equity. I am part of that conversation. The most recent keynote speaking, I think, was by a local, actually an African entrepreneurship accelerator program called Synapis, and they're all about empowering businesses in the marketplace. And lastly, most recently, is voice acting. I'm taking it up as an actual business offer because my background is journalism. And when I looked at my hands and I said, what more could I do? I realized that I have a media trained voice, but that I could do more with it. And so I'm a woman who's always seeking for more in life, more meaning, more purpose, more service. And I felt that having an African woman's voice would definitely help organizations which are promoting work for minority women or Africans or African women, that I would definitely be of great service to such organizations that are looking for the voice and the story that comes with my voice. And so, yeah, those are the three main services I'm offering at Let's.
So, Ayuma, who are your typical clients? Are they corporations?
Mm-hmm.
Are they freelancers? Are they just individual people who need a boost in their career? Who do you typically serve?
The people I mainly serve are women in leadership positions. Most of them are entrepreneurs who are either launching new businesses. These women are often top-level corporate managers or consultants, and they are transitioning into starting something of their own. It's often scary. It's often a very lonely journey. So they often reach out to me to be their accountability partner and to give them tools and strategies that they need to build these new businesses and launch these new businesses. Also, there have been some business women who feel lost in their businesses. You know, you've been running a business for quite some time, but you just feel lost. You feel like things are just repetitive, and you feel like your business and you are disconnecting. So I become like that marriage counselor that helps women come to the root of why they fell in love with this business in the first place, but also helping them tell the true story behind their businesses, because most of the time the women feel afraid to talk about the real reason why they started their businesses. And then also there are women who are having leadership challenges. I mean, top level, mid-level or senior managers in wherever it is that they're working, and they're just looking for more, but they're facing glass ceilings in their leadership, and they're looking for leadership tools, feminine leadership tools that will help them thrive. Because oftentimes they've tried the masculine styles, they've gotten vetoed, they did bite the dust, and so now they're looking for, is there an alternative for me to lead as a woman in this organization and still thrive and not have people vetoing me all around? So what I do is that I offer them those leadership development tools and strategies that even Fortune 500 women have been using. And that's why we are hearing so many of them of late over the last 10 years. It's because they have intentionally invested in feminine leadership strategies that help them win as women.
Let's talk about your YouTube channel. It's called Let's with Ayuma. I watched several of your videos, as I mentioned. What has been the contribution of your YouTube channel toward your business in terms of promoting it, in terms of getting the word out? I mean, it's always good to have a social media presence to cast your net far and wide. But I will say that you have a very engaging presence on YouTube. You seem very personable and your personality comes through. How has YouTube been an asset in your business?
I tell you, Dan, this is something that started out as a fun project. I was actually supposed to start this YouTube channel with a friend of mine and business partner, but she just said, no, for me, I want to specifically serve B2B. And for me, my passion was B2C at that point, because I really love the power of human stories. And I wanted to speak specifically to those people. So that's why it launched the way it did with me. And I tell you, it has been such a beautiful journey, because I actually struggled at the beginning. I struggled with imposter syndrome, because I was wondering what contribution, like why me? What would make me different? what would make people come to my channel, and when there are already others who have 1 million subscribers on their channels, what would people judge me and my makeup and because the reality is women get judged a lot for things that don't even count. Trust you me, especially as a journalist. I mean, no one cares if the male journalist has put on the same suit the whole week, but they care a lot about the woman. Has she put on weight? That contouring is off, her eyebrows look off. It's like all this nonsense that just does not count. So I really felt afraid that I would even get judged a lot, because there's a certain look that women are expected to have on social media. Just so that people can pay attention to you. Like, you must look pretty first so that we can listen to you. And for me, I was like, I'm here to change lives. I'm not here to look pretty. What I needed to do is just force myself to get over myself and to just start serving. And obviously, at first, it started with lots of friends who later on kept quiet. They were like, okay, fine, we've watched your channel. Now let's move on with our lives. We've already paid our dues. My mom was constantly watching every video, but then at some point she was like, no, they're too long. I can't watch all of these videos. And that then taught me a lesson. I learned that, by the way, there's a big difference between audience and customer. And so I started focusing more on my customers, who are these top level women who are on their journeys, leadership journeys, no matter where they are in the world. And they're just looking for, somebody who would say, this is for us. That's a constant reminder. I heard this from this guy. He's called TDG, from the States. And he said that at a point when he was about to give up on his mission, there's a woman who walked all the way from hospital to remind him that, hey, this is for us. This is for us. That always makes me so emotional, because anytime my journey has become rough, anytime I've started doubting myself, I've always reminded myself, who is this person who would say this is for us? Don't give up. Make one more episode for us. Teach us what you've done. That's what kept me going. And I kept thinking of my clients who pay me premium dollars to learn from my journey and what I have to offer. So that's when I started shifting from family and friends to my customers. And I tell you, it has become so meaningful, because I now directly attract clients through my videos. My videos, some of them have likes and some of them don't have likes, but it's my principle in business where I say that likes don't buy, customers do. And so my customers, I've realized, are not the kind of people who like posts and comment and say, hey, your hair looks good. My customers are women who are serious leaders, and they need to watch my journey consistently before they buy. So some of these women, I never see them post or comment on any of my content on social media. But 2 years later, a woman will just reach out and she's like, hey, I'm ready. Here is my money. I'm ready. And I'm like, where did you find me? Where did you hear me from? Recently, there's a woman who said that she found me on YouTube because I mentioned my YouTube channel on my friend's YouTube channel. And so she went to my YouTube channel, so that I had talked about my business, my website. She reached out. She's a fashion designer. And she was like, listen, I'm ready to buy. I'll work with you starting January. So these women are often ready to buy. So I just need to keep churning this content. And then there's a lady who said that, you know what, I've been watching some of your videos. I finally got to interact with you on social media at some point, but I don't think you noticed me because I was just in one of your Instagram lives. But now I'm ready. I'm ready to buy. And there are other women who consistently watch my journey and they recommend clients my way. So they might not be ready to buy, or they may not be the person who's ready to buy, but I'm speaking her language. And she's like, okay, this is encouraging. So these women recommend fellow women leaders in their circles to me as a client. So I would say that it's become a really good sales pipeline and a marketing tool for my business, and targeting the specific niche that I'm looking for, the women who are ready to buy. And so as I keep encouraging them with my content, I'm encouraging them and giving them enough confidence to know that I'm the right expert to work with on their current leadership challenge or storytelling challenge. So when they're ready to buy, they know the person to come to. So that's how my YouTube channel has really worked out for me. And I'm so, so grateful that I never gave in to those imposter stories, and that I just did what needed to be done.
Well, if there's one thing that I've noticed in perusing your YouTube videos, it's that you certainly, you mentioned imposter syndrome. It's hard not to take note of the fact that these stories that you're sharing are uniquely your own, and they really run the gamut. I mean, you talk about business topics, you talk about entrepreneurial topics. I'm just looking here. You talk about developing sexual discipline during quarantine. You talk about skincare, and you talk about a variety of things. I'm just wondering, Ayuma, where do you, sort of the obvious question, where do you come up with video ideas, and is some of it kind of off the cuff, or some of it tailored to your target audience, or how do you balance that?
Yeah, that's very interesting. So, and those are very interesting topics that you've mentioned. At the beginning, recently, the content has really, really focused a lot on the needs of these my premium clients, by the way. But in the past, like, developing sexual discipline and even my faith, talking about different things, that was when I was still experimenting. But I gave myself permission to talk about these things because it's what fellow women leaders are actually talking about. One thing that that has really worked as my asset is my network, because I get lots when I produce these YouTube videos, I then share it within my women network. In Kenya, WhatsApp is our number one social media platform. Then I think followed by Facebook, then maybe Instagram. So if you're not on WhatsApp, you're missing out on community. And because Kenya, we are a very communal culture. So what I do then is I share every Sunday. Once the YouTube video premieres, I take that YouTube video and I share it within my women network. And what that does, it's simply affirming the kind of conversations that are already happening in these women networks. And I've always been an icebreaker in all of the women networks that I'm part of, especially the older women. I realized that, and they've actually told me this, that they realize that as they are growing, they have really held themselves back in some ways. They've really held themselves back from having some conversations amongst fellow women. And so because I'm younger, I have enabled them and given them permission to speak about some of these things. And that's the thing with women in leadership. We are not just these women, these stoic women who are just supposed to talk about leadership and business and money and spreadsheets and all this stuff. We are not just this thing that is one thing. We are whole. And so in most of these women's communities, we talk about these things. We talk about motherhood. We talk about singlehood. We talk about, because it really follows us. Some of us, we go for business deals, and because we are single, it affects how we run business. It affects how our businesses are perceived. It even affects whether we get a loan from the bank or not, because are you married or are you not married? That's how it is here in East Africa. So we need to talk boldly and more openly about some of these things. And so when I create some of these topics, I'm simply speaking about the things we're already discussing, be it sex, be it motherhood, be it singlehood and relationships, be it actual business and money, and the cultural nuances around money and women. I basically talk about what women are already discussing, so that when I share this content in the women networks, it's nothing new. It's simply oh my gosh, you've actually chosen to talk about this. And out of curiosity, these women actually do watch, So I balance out my content so that sometimes it's not too heavy. It's not too heavy on business, or it's not too heavy on finances. But I want my content to be holistic, because women leaders are whole. So, for example, I used to be a model, right? And by being a former model, my body looks a certain way, and it's seen as a standard in some places. So sometimes women come to me and they're like, oh my gosh, you're so beautiful. I know, but I'm like, can you give me dating advice? You must be like a magnet out there. And I'm like, listen, I have been burying my head in business so much that I've neglected my dating life. So we end up talking about dating amongst women leaders who are thriving so well in their businesses, but in their let's say their relationship life, it's not going so well. So by discussing these things and openly talking about them and sharing with them my perspective that, hey guys, I know the pandemic was serious. Many of us women, when we're thinking survival, and also when we are thinking about supporting our communities and our businesses, we really buried our heads. But it's also time that we give permission to other areas of our lives. So it's more of a holistic approach and seeing the woman as whole, as opposed to just this one thing. So yes, my content addresses leadership issues, but not just leadership at work. It's also in the woman's other side of her life, if that makes sense. So beauty matters, leadership matters, money matters, but also dating matters. So I speak about all of these issues to just balance out the content so that it's not too heavy on one theme.
And I don't mean to cherry pick, Ayuma, but I was taken by one of your videos that I was watching this morning. The video is titled Five Crazy Things I've Been Told as a Black Businesswoman. And in that video, you shared things like, are your prices correct? Were you trained abroad? People having difficulty pronouncing your name and refusing to pronounce your name as it should be. I'm wondering if you might share some of those, one of those stories, one of those anecdotes, if you would. It seemed like a very interesting video, and it dealt very frankly with what can only be called stereotypes. But I wonder if you might just speak to that a moment.
Yeah. So, okay, the one that comes to the top of my head was this recent one. I was talking about it to my mentor, and it was when I was running my first business. It was a coffee culture events business where, Kenya produces one of the world's best coffee, right? And so I was wondering, is it possible? Because the previous generation, our parents, they all loved tea because there's a lot of tea associated with colonialism and stuff like that. We still produce some of the best tea in the world, actually. But with coffee culture, I noticed that lots of ecosystems, business ecosystems, entrepreneur ecosystems in Kenya often had a cafe, and people would always meet for coffee. And so even as a Kenyan, if you say, hey, let's meet for coffee, Kenyans, we are very entrepreneurial. We are very gutsy. And so when somebody says, hey, let's meet for coffee, it means we are going to discuss business, So I was like, why not recreate and co-create a new culture with the entrepreneurs in Nairobi or in Kenya? And so I decided to partner with the embassy of Eritrea to also welcome, because for a very long time I'd partnered with Kenyan coffee producers and baristas, and I highlighted some of their best work and stuff, and the events went well. But then I was like, okay, let's go beyond Kenya. So I immediately thought of Eritrea, because people often talk about Ethiopia, but they forget Eritrea. And so I was like, let me go to the embassy, let me get their partnership so that we can do an Eritrean coffee experience where different innovators will come together, get to learn about Eritrean coffee, get to learn about their stories, what happened during the civil war, but also just speak about great ideas, build great things around coffee. So I was really, really inspired by that. Things really went well. We were planning, we got a venue. In events, venue is everything. And so our venue partner was actually an Eritrean restaurant here in Kenya, a very well-known Eritrean restaurant. So I went for one of our last meetings, our final meetings, where we literally had to meet physically because this guy had had his wedding and all of that stuff. So we were mainly communicating with his board online. So finally he'd come from his honeymoon and he was now ready to meet, and he called some of the board members. So I remember arriving at the restaurant and being told to sit at the reception and wait for the meeting to start. And so when the meeting officially began, like the time that we planned, I was like, okay, these people aren't they time conscious? We are a few days to the event. We should be keeping time. Like we shouldn't be having things like being late at this point. But they just kept waiting. They served me coffee and some popcorn. And I was like, okay, this is nice, but can we start the meeting? So finally, somebody came and asked me, one of the waitresses came and asked me, hey, when is Michelle going to come? When is she going to finally arrive and join us for this meeting? And I said, I am Michelle. I have been here. I've been here and waiting to to join this meeting. And so they were like, oh, okay. I'm so sorry. She was surprised. And so she invited me into the meeting room. And when I entered the meeting room, I sat there and they also asked me the same question. So when are we expecting your boss to come? When are we expecting your boss to arrive? I was like, what boss? I am the boss. This is my business. I am Michelle. And they didn't even hide it. They told me to my face, oh, we thought you were a white Italian woman. For me, I was so surprised because I was really taken aback. I was like, so this whole time you've been waiting for a white Italian woman called Michelle to arrive. And at that time, I was using my surname. My dad's name sort of sounds, Italian, but it's not. It's Kenyan. And I wasn't using Ayuma that much at that point. So they thought I was a white Italian woman. So we went ahead with the meeting and I thought, okay, fine, at least we clarified that area, because at the end of the day, as Black women, we still need to work 10 times more to prove that, you know what, don't see my color, just see what I can do. So they were like, okay, fine, we'll discuss, we will look at the final details, and then we will go for that whole the event. So I hailed my cab before I reached the gate to leave the location, to leave the venue of that restaurant. They had already sent me an email because I was on my phone looking at where did my Uber, where was it? Where did the guy park? And what's the number plate? So I saw an email come through, read the email, and these guys had canceled. They had completely canceled. They had said, we're withdrawing from the event. And so I was like, I had the Eritrean embassy booked. I had a venue booked, which is a creatives garage. I had the media booked. I had everything booked. And I had to say sorry to all of these people because at that time they were I think they were the only, if not, there were two Eritrean restaurants that I knew of in Nairobi. And obviously last minute, you can't get another venue partner or coffee partner, just random last minute. So, and I knew for a fact that the only reason these people canceled out is because they expected a white Italian woman called Michelle, but instead they found an East African, just like them, who's called Michelle. So that really, really took me aback. And I was like, at the end of the day, business does not care for all of these things. It cares about getting the job done. And so if indeed they were really concerned about opening up various target markets to enjoy their coffee, to celebrate Eritrea, as a honeymoon destination, to understand the impacts of the civil war, to understand, I can only imagine the kind of conversations that would have happened at that event. But because of their bias, which was really sad because they are fellow Black people just like me, and they are from Eritrea, they still saw me as less than or the other. And so those are some of the things that I've faced as a Black woman who's an entrepreneur, even in my own country. That is really sad. But at the same time, I use that as fuel to keep pushing me for more, to keep going higher. Because now, while there were people like those who looked down upon me because of the color of my skin, in my business, I have focused more on where are people actively looking for Black African women like myself. And that's why I'm so proud to be associated with organizations like The Moth, who are all about beautiful stories from different parts of the world. And The Moth actually called me when they were holding their main stage event here in Nairobi in 2019, I think, 2018, 19. I was their curtain raiser. And that event, it was partnered, it was sponsored by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And Melinda Gates was in audience, and she got to listen to my story, and she got to see the kind of work that I do. And yes, I got paid premium dollars for it. So what I'm learning along my journey is that while the world continues to, fight some of these narratives, the best thing I can do for myself as a business person is to focus more on the people who are actively looking for my voice, for my solutions, for my services, and for my awesome, because I think energy management is important. But that was quite a weird situation to go through, to actually face it live.
So Ayuma, tell us, how did you get into voiceover, and how is that going for you?
Wow. So something happened at not the last quarter, mid-year. I was having a conversation with my coach, and my business coach, And I'm always talking to him about money, and he's a finance guy. So he's always like, okay, fine, where can we make more money? We need to figure out how you can make more money. At that time, I had tried launching a coaching program, which gloriously failed. Like I tell you, it gloriously failed in my face. And so I was at that point where I was like, okay, this isn't working. Where can we explore? Where can we seek out other opportunities? Because now the thing is, I've gotten so used to serving premium clients to a point where now if I start charging for workshops, which are way less than what I normally charge, people are not used to me speaking that kind of language and that kind of amount of money. They're like, what are you giving us? Is it of value? But I also realized that lots of women want to share their stories privately, because I tell you what women go through in their leadership and leading business. I tell you, at times I find myself feeling like I'm a counselor, because a woman choosing to run a business could potentially mean a marriage that's breaking. Like that's where women's journeys are at. For a woman to choose to run a business, it potentially means her culture abandoning her, or her husband leaving her, or her being judged as a bad mother because she's spending so much time in her business and not playing games with her child. There are all these things that women go through. So that's why that program didn't work, because women want very personalized services, and they really wanted it to be one-on-one. So I asked my coach, okay, what can we do? Because I'm really feeling left down. I'm really feeling let down. I'm feeling so disappointed, and I need my finances to improve because I have plans. There are things that I want to achieve in my life, and I want to use what I have to build. And so he challenged me one time by asking me, whatever it is that you're offering, is it really urgent to the market? And so a consistent challenge that I've always had with some of my services, including my previous business, was that sometimes my business ideas would be a little bit too progressive. I would be way ahead of the current market. Like for sure, I know that my revenue would look completely different if I was operating in the States, because the market already understands the kind of things that I do offer. But here in Kenya, I need to take a few steps back to where the market currently is at in terms of their level of investment, their level of awareness, and also what is actively being sought out. So when I had this honest conversation with my coach, I was like, okay, fine, time to build new revenue streams. One thing he challenged me to do is look at what I already had in my hands, my toolbox. And he challenged me to stop calling myself a former journalist, because one time when he was asking me, what is one thing which, if you're to market to, let's say, business, entrepreneur ecosystems and stuff like that, if you tell them that you're a storyteller running this organization, it will completely cancel out all manner of doubt that you can do this excellently. So that's when I told him that, oh, I'm a journalist. I'm a former journalist. I kept saying that I'm a former journalist. And because I was so jaded with journalism and what the media did to me as a woman, especially when I was starting out, I didn't want to associate myself with the word journalism, because I faced a lot of sexism. Every single job interview I went for in the media, I was asked for sex. So I literally had to say no. And so I had to figure out other ways of making money using these skills, which actually helped me launch my business. And so I looked back into my journey, obviously from a healed perspective. And my coach said, do you think by calling yourself a former journalist, you're discrediting yourself from the actual tool that you have to completely cancel out the doubt in the market that you're looking to serve? So I said, oh my gosh, it totally is. And it was an imposter syndrome thing acting out. And so I started calling myself a journalist and not a former journalist. And I realized that many people resonated. There were less questions asked about where have I studied, or am I credible enough? Some people then said, oh, this makes sense. Then I asked myself, out of this journalism, what do I have which I haven't explored because of this imposter syndrome? And the thing that I'd actually studied to do was to become a radio presenter. And I said, there's something powerful about radio and my voice. People don't focus too much on my looks and stuff like that. They just focus on my voice. It speaks for itself. It does the job. And so I noticed that some of my friends who I studied with in school, they actually, who are journalists, they are voice actors as well. So I asked myself, what if, and why can't I do the same? So I reached out to one of them and I said, hey, I really like what you've been doing. I followed your journey. I know we all studied together in journalism school. You've done really well as a journalist. So I'm like, how is it possible for you to guide me and mentor me through this journey? I'm really curious about exploring it. I have a voice. My voice is still radio trained. I still, might know my way around some things. Could you guide me? So at first she was a bit scared because she was like, the word mentor is too heavy, it's too deep. But I told her, hey, just teach me how to start. Like, that's all I need. I'm really curious about this thing. I'm really encouraged. So you don't need to do much. Just teach me what I need to do to start. So she taught me on how to start, how to invest, how to, joining some of these platforms like Voices and all that. She taught me how to create my first demo. She even taught me to have courage to just, create scripts out of the campaigns that I dream of doing. And she also taught me how to set up some of these profiles, how to speak and stuff like that. And even without paying, I was in one of these pay to play sites, voices.com. And even without paying for a premium account or premium membership, I got my first job. I got my first job. I did it. The client loved my job. She came back for more work. And I was really, really so proud of myself that, hey, it all began with the questions, if they're doing it, why can't I? So far, it's been amazing. I mean, doing auditions. Now this is the other side of voice acting that I'm learning, constantly doing auditions. But what I love is that I'm hearing my voice changing. I'm hearing my confidence building. I'm also seeing a different business acumen coming through. Because the thing that I'm learning is that, especially for lots of creatives in Kenya, we are afraid of calling ourselves business people. And even women, we are afraid of calling ourselves business people. So voice actors don't call themselves business people. And so therefore, they don't treat their craft like a business. But for me, I was like, listen, I'm intending to earn money from this. I'm intending to treat this as a business. And so I'm investing. So I ended up investing in a premium membership, ended up investing in a community of voice actors here in Kenya. It's called VALK, VALK. So we are a community of voice actors in Kenya and East Africa, actually. We share opportunities, we share advice, we share various opportunities. But I'm getting to meet some of the people who've been in the game for quite some time. And it just gives me great joy that suddenly, because of asking myself that question and believing in myself, I'm suddenly in a space where I'm creating a new revenue stream for myself, but also I'm contributing my voice to amazing initiatives that I really, really believe in, which are actively seeking African voices, African voices for their campaigns. So that's something that really gives me joy. So far, so good. Still auditioning, still fine-tuning my setup, still doing the creative stuff, marketing. And but I'm glad I've been getting lots of great auditions. In fact, from very, very big brands. Just recently I got auditioned by Adidas and also World Remit. So it's really, really quite something. Seeing that, wow, these guys, I've always wanted to be the voice of a sports brand. So the fact that I had Adidas reaching out, that really meant a lot to me. I was like, wow, it's just telling me that I am worthy and my voice has permission to be in these spaces.
Ayuma, you've been very gracious with your time. I want to ask you one final question. Thus far, we've learned a lot about you, that you're an advocate for women's empowerment, that you're a social media influencer, you're now a voiceover artist. You've got a lot going on and a very rich career and a very rich background upon which to draw, and you have a unique story to tell. I'm just wondering, to kind of bring it home, to wrap it up, where do you see things going for you in the next 5 to 10 years, for example? Where's it all going for Ayuma Michelle?
Wow, you sound like my coach. My coach should eavesdrop in this conversation and be like, I'm taking notes. What I see for myself in the next 5 to 10 years, in fact, I actually wrote it down. It's by a program that I did for Mel Robbins. And it's really helped me look at my journey from a decade perspective as opposed to a 1 year perspective. And I tell you, Dan, I see myself as a more confident version of myself. I see myself as a wealthier woman. I see myself as having impacted lives and businesses, if triple or even double of what I've done so far. But I see myself having discovered, just the way I was able to get into voiceover by asking myself, why not? Why not? I see myself asking myself that and opening up more doors and opportunities for myself by asking that question out of curiosity, imagination, but also led with action. I see myself opening up more doors for myself, using my voice, using my story, and using my unique culture ad, And I just believe that as long as I keep believing in myself and I keep asking that question, I may be looking for doors, but gates would even open up for me. And that's what I see for myself. The next 5 years, I see myself stronger, wiser, richer, and more impactful as a human being, making the world a more purposeful, because the word purpose is very close to me, the word a more purposeful place to live in. And, taking more women with me on that journey.
And I would also recommend to our listeners, as I wrap it up, to check out your video about how you became a storyteller, because I think that for people who are looking to get into producing video content, and I have not really, I've done a little bit, but certainly you're an inspiration to me. I think that video covers a lot of basic concepts about telling a genuine story and taking that leap. So that's one that I would recommend to our audience as well. I don't know if there's anything you want to add about that particular video, but that was another one that I found to be particularly moving and motivating.
Thank you. Thank you for highly recommending my content. And thank you for having me here. Yes, I would also highly recommend watching the video of my storytelling journey. Also, I would highly recommend that they would watch the one about how I won $1,500 from, by sharing my story. That one, I think I would highly recommend it, especially for creatives who are looking to position themselves in money-making, for money-making opportunities. I would highly recommend that one as well. So thank you so much, Dan, and thank you for your time.
Ayuma Michelle has been our guest. Ayuma Michelle, letsfindyourstory.com. Letsfindyourstory.com is her URL, and her YouTube channel, Let's with Ayuma. You can connect with her on LinkedIn. She's there as well. And I'm sure elsewhere on social media that we didn't get to, but you can certainly Google her and find all about her story and her services. And Ayuma, again, it's been a great, great pleasure. I did hear a little dog barking in the background, but no DJ music. So we'll have to do this again sometime when they're really cranking it up. So, but again, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Dan. The pleasure is mine.
Thank you for listening to Your Hearing Voices. Please don't share this podcast with anybody and forget about subscribing. We've already reached 8 subscribers and that's enough. We're not saving the whales here, people. Thanks again for listening.